Morning. Now we are going to begin the second day of the International Conference on Living Lab 2023. This is Soo Nam again. I'd like to welcome not only the distinguished scholars from all around the world, but also the audiences who are watching via iPad YouTube channel. I'd like to welcome you all again. And let me briefly introduce what we are how we are organizing today's session. In the morning, we will again have Living Lab case session, and Professor In-kyung Kim from US and Professor Shin will share about outcome of their class, Living Lab class. And then Professor Lee from iPad Yonsei will introduce the outcome of pre and post survey, which were conducted by the 4 universities. And after this morning session is finished, we will move to the building where iPad is located, since this room is booked for another meeting. And for the afternoon session, we are going to talk about the next step. We will share how each university plan to have a Living Lab class for the coming semesters, and how we can collaborate more effectively. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Professor Shin for his presentation. Sang-bum Shin is a professor in the Department of International Relations at Yonsei University and the Director of Institute for Poverty Alleviation and International Development. Please welcome Professor Shin with a big hand.
Thank you very much. I'm going to present my case of my class, and then the class was shared. The process and results were shared by those professors in the Vietnam and professors in UGM too. So this is the outline of the course. Living Lab is a method of social innovation based on the problem-solving activities, and then, like I said before, the main emphasis on the experiment. It is a very typical problem-solving and community-based learning, but unlike these existing teaching methods, Living Lab emphasizes the experiment. My course is titled International Development Cooperation. It's a very typical 400-level undergraduate course in the Political Science and International Relations Department. And the topics are very typical: foreign aid, poverty, resource curse, non-DAC providers, vaccine inequality, refugees, environment, whatever. Between developing countries, developed countries, with anything, topics happening in terms of the international development cooperation. For that, we also learn some theoretical approaches, theories, concepts of the international development, just like North-South relations, inequality, Marxism, something like that. And I also emphasize the global approach to cope with global problems. We already talked about this very much. So this was the course title and the course outline. And the other course that I'm going to do in next semester, which is the fall semester, is the global environmental politics, which is completely different from this. But the global environmental politics is closer to Professor Pruo's course and Professor Randall's course too. So in that way, we can have some more overlaps in next semester. But this one is kind of wide open. We deal with a whole variety of the topics like environment, education, gender, transportation, anything any problem that could happen in the local areas. I think for the instructors, the goals of these Living Lab activities could be very, very important. We have to inform students that the reason why we are doing this in the classroom. If they understand this very well, then there's no problem. But if they don't really understand this, then I think it's going to be a mess because they don't really know why do we have to do this. And the instructor says, well, we are doing some international cooperation, so you have to do this, then that could not be the reason for them. The reason for them should be more specific in terms of their learning and instruction methods. So these are my answers. Students can understand the global mechanism, and they can understand the importance of solving global problems in my neighborhood. So, and the students focus on the local problems and solution in their local areas. And then they ask if the partner students might have some similar problems. If they have, what kind of solutions they could have. If their solutions are different, what makes that difference? So these are the exploration that they're gonna ask in academic processes. So if the goals of these living lab projects is very clearly specified in the classroom at the beginning of the semester, then could be more successful upon my experience. The course structure at the first week of the course, I introduced Living Lab project and its goals for the first day, and then the group assignment by the instructor as early as possible. This is usually students usually ask me to finalize the group assignment as early as possible, so they can learn each other, they can meet each other, they can prepare earlier. So group assignment is done by me. I don't really allow them to make groups, so it's like a dictatorship. So and then preparation session for an hour per week. If a week is for 3 hours, so among the 3 hours, I assign at least 1 hour for the group preparation in class. And then I watch teams and see if there's any problem in the teamwork. And if there's a problem, then I just step in and make some adjustments. And presentation at the end of the semester and produce video clip to share with partner universities. The video clips, 2 video clips that Elda showed us yesterday, so something like those video clips that we all made, and they made them too, and then the Vietnamese professors made them too, so we shared those videos as a result. And then making comments to the partner students' projects, and then the comments were delivered to the partner university students. And then also, in last semester, the class schedule was academic calendar within these 4 universities, including the Bridgewater State University in the United States, were very different. So in the case of Korea, we did it in the middle of the semester, and after we finished this, Living Lab project, I started again the regular sessions and exams, and this was really a confusion for the students. But they were just focusing on the Living Lab projects, and the projects was over, they come back again to the regular sessions, and I did the same thing as before. So this was a kind of schedule mismatch, but it was inevitable. Like I said again, yesterday we talked about this. Each team should get approval by me for their ideas of problems and solutions. They sometimes raise irrelevant problems that they do not exist in our area, or it's really too big, like a structural problems. Something like we have some poor people here, something like that. So some people have no meaning of life, something like that. So we talked about this yesterday because Vietnamese students in Gajah Mada, they are really good students. In Yonsei, they are not really good students, so they just don't really try hard to poke and solve those local problems. Irrelevant solutions, copying from others, solutions with low feasibility, they just turn in their ideas and then get the grades. So if students cannot do this, at the end, eventually, I discuss with the team and recommend them some problems and sometimes some solutions, but this does not really happen very frequently. at the beginning, they look like they don't have any idea about the local problems, but after repeat and repeat of this approval process, they became really get interested in the local problems, because if I don't approve, they cannot get the grade. So that makes them move and more seriously involved in the local problems. And as a professor who have been doing this for years, 3 or 4 years, I have known I know very interesting and very diverse cases, previous cases of living labs and problem-solving activities all around the world, I think, mostly in Europe and mostly in Korea too. So if they copy something in internet, I quickly realized that. So they cannot do this. Purpose of this approval process, if I wait and see the patient, with patients, students spend least time and then least energy, because they are not good students. So if students copy, it does not improve their creativity and problem-solving capacity. So I don't let them copy. Idea generation is one thing, but more important is a student as a problem finder. We talked about this when we were in a dinner over wine. So students as a problem finder, I think this is, in my opinion, this is the most important part in the Living Lab process. Evaluation, midterm 20%, final 40%, Living Lab project 40%. And for Living Lab project, student selection, students select relevant problems, it's 40%. Student solution is original and creative, and solutions are feasible. Those are the breakdown. The number one is the most important. And the students should see how global problems are specifically shaped in my neighborhood. That's what I emphasize. But this breakdown is just like a showcase, because once they get approval from me, then if it's 40%, the Living Lab project is 40%. Once they are approved, they will get 39 or at least 38, 39. So. Has no meaning. So how instructor can help students to find local problems? I provide theories of democracy, the importance of citizen participation in decentralized political settings, show how global problems are differently shaped in the different political, economic, and social context. And then also I invite some local civil society leaders or advocacy leaders or NGO persons, or the city government officials as a guest speaker, and they're going to provide some information to the students. Most of my students are not from Wonju. They are from other areas, so they don't have no idea about this. So, how to cope with the free rider problem? The number one is assign group myself. That could minimize the free rider problem at the beginning, I guess, upon my experiences. Handout, I distribute handout in which students describe for their former experiences of the group projects. And then also they specify their roles that they want to contribute best. Hey, I can do this best. I'm a really idea generator. I really do this very well, so they can share with them. If the team is distributed, I mean the group is assigned, then in the first meeting, they share those handouts. And then also I look at the teams and in-class team preparation sessions. If there's a shy person or if there's a overly dominant student, so if there's a problem, I step in. And the final exam, usually the exam topic is write about your team's process in detail. If there's a free rider or if there's some student with problem, they don't really write very well. So I'll cut some points. I just make them write about some specific difficulties when you were preparing this project. And if you designated this problem, but during your preparation process, you might have some alternative solutions. Then you will provide all those detailed processes about discussions. If they do not really participate the discussions very well, they could not write this very well. So in this way, I can recognize who was the free rider and who was the contributor. If necessary, another handout is distributed, but I do not really do this very much. But this handout is just let them write who was the most important contributor in your group and who was the free rider, and then I collected them. But that I don't really count that in the final grade, but this is kind of alarm process to the students. But I really don't really do this. Sometimes students strongly want me to do this. In that case, I will seriously consider this, but usually I don't really do this. After class, if they want, they can apply for the local living lab competition. And when we talked about this first in Duanguang and in UGM, this was an issue because our partner universities do not have a chance to do this. But compared to your cases, we have, Yonsei students have a little bit more opportunities to get real funding for the real experiment. Because as you know, in the classroom, we stopped at the point of the experimental design. We designed the experiment. We prepared the experiment plan, but we stopped there. And after class, if they want, they will have a chance for the real opportunity for real experiment. We have the local competition for living lab, and it's not for the students only. The general citizens can participate, but our students are usually accepted. And if they're accepted, they have 100 days experiment, and then with the budget of like 5,000 or 10,000 US dollars for the teams and some other benefits, some other supports. And if they don't really want to do this, they don't have to do this because the class is over, the final grades were done, so they don't have to do anything. But if there are some teams, then some of the teams really want to do this. And so another way around is university can support them as a club for the young entrepreneurship. If they organize them a club, then they are supported by the university too. After 100 days experiment, some further changes could made. We have some examples here in the students. They make this opportunity into their own career development. Sometimes for some students, this changes their own course of their future development and so on. 2 habits, combination between regular teaching sessions and the living lab sessions is very important because students, in some cases, students are not satisfied with the living lab projects. Their primary goal to sign up this course is to learn about the traditional knowledge about this course. For those guys, the combination between these 2 sessions are very important. So we have to fit them very well about the traditional style knowledge and then also this kind of problem-solving activities. And then also, like I said before, because of the different academic schedules, the transition from the living lab projects back to the real regular teaching session was a little bit tough. And then specify the goals of the living lab projects. And like I said this, students can ask after the project, has there been any attempt in our community to solve the problem that we raised in this project, in this project? So they're gonna study, if they want, if they think about this, they're gonna study further about, has there any kind of attempt by the government or by the civil society leaders or by some companies? And then also the second question is, can the government solve this problem? If we want them to do it, what do we have to do? How about political parties, parliaments? If citizens are involved in solving the problems, then what does the government do? Because we pay them the tax to do this, but if they don't do this, then why do we have to do this? Why do political parties exist? Why do MPs, the member of parliaments exist, do they do something about this problem-solving activities? If we do this, do we need some more kind of traditional way of politics? If they don't, can we create a new type of politics in the local politics based on these Reliving Lab projects? And also, can international organizations or agreements solve this problem? Have they attempted? If failed, why? We talked about this yesterday in terms of the climate change. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was agreed in 1992. After that, we passed about 30 or 40 years, we didn't really have any results, the positive results. How do citizens think about these issues? So I just make them think about, students think about these issues after the project. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shin. Now let me invite Professor In-kyung Kim. Professor In-kyung Kim is now attending our conference via Zoom from US. Let me introduce Professor Kim briefly. In-kyung Kim is Associate Professor of Political Science at Bridgewater State University from USA. Thank you so much for being with us, Professor Kim. Can you change the screen?
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Professor Kim.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah, okay, good.
Can the audience see my face?
Not really.
Okay, then let me stop sharing. And then
Thank you.
Now can they see me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Hello, everyone. My name is In-kyung Kim. I am Associate Professor of Political Science at Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts, in the United States. It's a great honor for me to be here to share my experiences. Let me start sharing my screen. Share. Excellent. Because I cannot see the audience because of my slide, please let me know if you have any issues with the slides or my speech or anything. I would really appreciate it. I collaborated with Dr. Shin last semester in spring 2023, which was January through May 2023, for the newly developed course, the political science 300 level major course, which is cross-listed with sustainability minor 300 level elective courses, titled Global Environmental Controversies. I was invited by Dr. Shin in October 2022 for international collaboration, and then we developed our ideas, and then we agreed to adopt a COIL approach for virtual exchanges, which is totally asynchronous collaboration. I would like to talk about what this course is about. This is the newly designed course by me, so it might sound a little kind of how can I say fuzzy. So this course try to introduce students to various global environmental controversies and public debates regarding environmental philosophy, such as precautionary principle and sustainable development. Principles versus politics, such as military exemption from environmental regulations, And energy safety, such as nuclear power, biofuels, hydropower, like, is nuclear power really clean, right? And is hydropower really sustainable? Those kind of questions. We aimed to achieve 3 learning outcomes. The first 2 learning outcomes are very subject-based. The third learning outcome that I initially designed for this course was to develop interpersonal and leadership skills by engaging in a problem-based service learning. So it wasn't challenging for me to tweak this problem-based service learning with the Living Lab project. I was not that familiar with the idea of the Living Lab kind of a teaching method when I was introduced by Dr. Shin, but thanks to this kind of a third learning outcome that I was prepared for, I was really happy to use this new course, even though I was a little kind of nervous and hesitant to incorporate the new course into this new teaching method into a new course. But I will talk about those challenges at the end about what to improve, but I will stop here. The course requirement was like this. As you see, Living Lab project accounted for 60% of the total final grades. So for students, Living Lab project was a very, very heavy lift. And it must have been challenging because as Dr. Shin mentioned, we have, as instructors, we have to be balanced between traditional kind of a knowledge production and acquisition. But at the same time, this new kind of experimental Living Lab project, but I was bold enough, I would say, to spend most of, more than half of the class assignments for the Living Lab. Because this idea of Living Lab is very new, not only for students, but also to the instructor, which is me. I adopted scaffolding teaching strategy, which means the process, which this scaffolding means we build up one by one. So this is the process of breaking the Living Lab assignment into manageable units, so the students are not overwhelmed and supported by faculty to grasp new concepts and master new skills at every single step. So in the syllabus, I explained, in what week, what you are expected to accomplish, in what week, what you are, asked to submit, what assignments. So I try to be really detailed in the syllabus, using the scaffolding teaching strategy. Let me explain one by one with more kind of schedule-based through the syllabus. On the first day of our class, I introduced the idea of a Living Lab project that would be totally new to students, focusing on the following questions. What is Living Lab? What are the objectives of this Living Lab project for international educational cooperation? And who are the partners? Because I was not competent about the concept of the Living Lab, I asked Dr. Shin to kind of, give us a lecture. And he kindly recorded his lecture on the introduction of the Living Lab just for my class, which I was really grateful. He discussed the background and practices of the Living Lab, particularly in Europe. So on the day 1, I introduced the Living Lab project, kind of a concept, new concept. And I don't think students fully understood by watching this, lecture video. On the first day of the school, students are still, winter break kind of, mentality. So I knew it's gonna be hard for them to swallow all those key features of Living Lab, but I was ready for those kind of phenomena. So in the third week of the semester, I introduced 4 example kind of projects conducted by previous UNC students that Dr. Shin shared with me. So we spent about 20 minutes to discuss how those projects would be related to the students' life in Bridgewater. So this discussion helped students understand the directions and specifics of the Living Net project significantly. So examples, I thought, I don't know if you are aware of this or not. American students do not carry umbrellas in the rainy days because these teenagers, or just turned to early 20s, they think it's cool thing to get wet, without umbrellas. So one of the example cases was about how to kind of provide the community-based umbrella use. So I was curious how my students would respond to this particular case. But interestingly, students loved that idea. And yes, I lose my umbrella all the time. And then they were so excited about that project. But I asked them back, like, do you really carry umbrellas? They said, not necessarily. So that conversation was very interesting. But students were very quick to link the UNC students' previous projects to their real kind of life. And then in the in the fourth week of the semester, students were asked to individually submit the problem narratives in 200 words that define the issues that they are interested in. So this assignment was individual assignment before we form a group. So I asked the students to bring their own ideas, and then we spend a good amount of class time to brainstorm together, by discussing their individual ideas. But as I had only 6 students in the class, we were able to spend good amount of time to discuss, how great a particular idea is, or how their ideas can be kind of added or contribute to other students' ideas. So interestingly, I expected it would be challenging to form groups because students might need to compromise their interest to be part of a group. However, I found the group formation was very natural, as students had very engaged discussion on each student's problem narrative. So this individual-based assignment was very helpful for group formation and idea generation. And then once the groups are formed, the students, each group was asked to, resubmit their group problem statement based on their group discussion. So I assigned in-class group work for designing the project before finalizing their group project. So I was able to witness their group discussion, which was very helpful because I was able to observe their kind of exchanges of ideas and then the building a process. I had only 2 teams, so it was easy for me to kind of contribute to their conversations. And then I will talk about this in a particular Bear BID the intervention, which was very new to me and to students. And then in the 9th week here, I spent the entire 90 minutes of class for the group work. So after they determined their project ideas, students secured their class time for group work so that they can make sure they can develop very solidly their project at the early kind of phases. And then in the 15th week here, in the 14th week, students were asked to make a presentations, and then we recorded the presentations, and then we shared those presentations with the Dr. Shin. And then the final week, in the 15th week, the students were assigned to watch the Living Lab project in Partner University, which is in Yonsei University, and then they were assigned to provide their feedback to the Yonsei University students' projects. As I had only 6 students, I assigned each student to a particular group of Yonsei students. So so that every group of Yonsei University students can get the feedback from at least one student. I provided prompts for the feedback for writing. Dr. Shin kindly shared those prompts, which was incredibly helpful. What are the similarities and differences between Bridgewater and Wonju, right? And in terms of the nature of the problem, and do you think it is the same solution to our problem in our region? Do you think this solution is applicable to our community? That kind of thing. So there are some variations of the quality of the feedback to our students, to Yonsei students, but most of the students provided good feedback, and I was amazed, how applicable the Yonsei students kind of solutions can be for Bridgewater issues, and vice versa. And Yonsei students' feedback was much more solid. I think Dr. Shin provided good guidance for writing feedback. I was able to tell by reading 2 different sets of feedback. So I want to learn more about about the guidance that Dr. Shin provided for feedback writing assignment. I had 2 student projects. As Dr. Shin didn't share what those specific projects were, I wouldn't spend much time in explaining these 2 projects, but let me briefly talk about what their projects was about. The first group, their title was Bare Necessities. They tried to focus on the problem of overconsumption and clothing waste. But students were fascinated about the problems of fast fashion industry. So they purchase shirts in kind of $6, and then they wear it one summer and they throw it away, and then they repeat the same thing over and over again. So that's the fast fashion industry. And they noticed the problems associated with this, and then they tried to reduce those the waste associated with fast fashion industry. This team, interesting, participated in the entrepreneurship competition, which I will explain shortly. So their presentation styles are a little different from the other, because they had to follow the competition kind of presentation guidelines. So they had to explain key things such as why their business model is important, and who are the competitors to their business, and what is economic analysis, how much the breakdowns of income, and how to finance the startup costs, and how to market, right, their business. Then what would be the future of their business, all these things they were asked to include in their presentation for the entrepreneurship competition hosted by the Bridgewater State University. Yonsei students' feedback to project 1, which was very, very well written and interesting. They found the same issue in Wonju. They researched, I think, they said there are more than 400 clothing collection boxes. The student must have researched in how many clothing collection boxes in Wonju. And so why the solution of Bridgewater students can be applied to Wonju, not only to Wonju, but also Yonsei University as well, because the first group of my students designed to develop a pop-up store on campus. It's a monthly pop-up store for the second-handed clothing selling, so clothing stores. So students were very interested in that idea, and they found it's applicable to Yonsei University. And the most interesting point made by the Yonsei students in this feedback was the relevance to existing Yonsei students project. So one of the Yonsei students project was about the MediWatch project, and then they said they can hook the Bridgewater State University students' ideas into MediWatch project to make this business more profitable and accessible to students. That was very well done by Yonsei students. Second project. The second project was also about waste, but not fast fashion industry. Rather, they tackled the problem of food waste. So they unlike South Korea, unlike other towns in Massachusetts in the United States, Bridgewater doesn't have any compost policy at all. So we dump all the scrap vegetables and all those the food waste into the garbage bins altogether. But as it produces, it emits methane and all the toxic pollution in the process of not only incineration but also landfilling, right? So students paid attention to the question to the problem of those food waste without composting policy. So they defined the problem in Bridgewater, by researching, and then what can be done with this new business model, sort of consulting kind of a company to kind of provide solutions to the town of Bridgewater, the city, to the city, so that they can reduce the waste. And then one thing that I was proud of this project was they tried to learn from other cases in other cities in the United States. So they conducted case studies for San Francisco, which was very successful in a city in managing compost and recycle. So this group got the feedback from the Yonsei students. Again, Yonsei students were amazed by the solutions that my students proposed because of the applicability to Wonju. And I was really grateful to learn about the issues in Wonju. Even though I'm Korean, I've never lived in Wonju, so I was not familiar with Wonju, the local issues in Wonju. And then they kind of explained how similar issues the Wonju citizens have to deal with. And then the students provided feedback like, this problem is more significant to Wonju than Bridgewater. Like, it's more populated area than Bridgewater. And so, they love the solution that our students provided. And then they were curious, they asked for more case studies. They were eager to learn more about the successful stories about management of the food waste. What kind of support and collaboration at BSU I received and I developed? I want to talk about two things, but I used the second Bear BID thing for my course more extensively. CUBES is collaborative university business experiences to bring together a team of faculty to explore ways to reinforce career readiness through curriculum. In the United States, in higher education, career readiness is has become a buzzword. What is the purpose of the higher education? Students students become more interested about how my major can make myself and my career myself ready for the next my journey beyond my higher education. So career readiness is very important. So this CUBE kind of idea was for career readiness. And then and how to collaborate with local businesses and organizations. So I thought Living Lab project is very clickable to this CUBE project. So I applied for kind of the CUBE project kind of application. I got accepted for this class project, but for some reasons, which I will explain. Which I will explain shortly. I focused on this one more rather than collaboration. Yes.
The connecting is not good now.
Oh.
Can you wait for a while?
Okay. I apologize for the connection.
마이크 테스트 해보라는 말씀이세요?
저 지금 어떻게 들리시나요? Is it better now?
지금 아직 잘 연결하고 잠시만요.
그렇습니까? 지금도 잘 안 됩니까?
네.
잘 안 들리시죠?
좀 잠시 나갔다가 들어가시면.
Excuse me, is it better now?
Same.
Can you hear me okay now? Can you hear me okay? Dr. Nam, can you hear me okay?
그러면
네, 말씀 한번 해보시겠어요?
네, 지금은 어떻습니까? Does it sound better?
어떻게? 이걸로 해도 똑같아요?
이걸로?
네, 이건 잘 들리네요.
잠시만요.
Maybe we can invite Professor Lee while we are solving the technical problem.
Excuse me? Does it sound better now?
It's the same now. Can you hear me, Professor Kim? Okay.
스피커를 어떻게 해요?
여기 컴퓨터 자체 스피커 어디 있죠? 될 것 같은데.
이걸로 어떻게?
저희가 말하는
말씀 한 번만 더 해보시겠어요?
지금은 어때요?
잠시만요.
네. 이렇게? 이걸 최대로 해서?
네.
이걸 더 키울 수 있어요?
아니 거기 안에.
그러면 이렇게 할까요? 이렇게 할까요?
이 PC에서
그걸 어디서 가져가서
진짜.
이게 스피커가 어딨지?
맨 뒤에 있어. 아 이거.
이게 스피커예요?
네. 그러면 제가
그러면
들고 있을게요. 네. 나 마이크 잡고 있을게요. 이거 여기다 놓고. 아니 마이크.
들리나요? 그러죠. 네. 알겠습니다. 그렇게 하겠습니다. 그러면 제가 I'm sorry for the technical issue. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. So Bear BID, which stands for Bright Ideas Developed. This is a competition conducted each year at the university, at Bridgewater State University hosted by the College of Business. So this event emphasizes learning and development for student entrepreneurship and open to all BSU students regardless of majors. So interestingly, I wasn't aware of this competition until this year. So when I saw the community announcement about this competition, I was super excited. Oh, my class can participate in because my students are doing Living Lab project. So I asked the students if they are interested in participating in this competition, and they said yes. So this event was announced in the middle of February. So I had to revise my schedule and syllabus to to allow and encourage students to participate in this event. For those interested in competition, the top 5 proposals are accepted for the final round of competition, and they have a chance to be mentored by a member of the business advisory board of the College of Business. If they win the first place, they get the award of $3,000 US dollars. For the second place, $2,000. For the third place, $1,000 for their seed money to start their own business. So students got excited, but at the same time, interestingly, they was worried. Dr. Kim, what if we get the award, and do we have to start a business? Because I am graduating this May. What should I do? Okay, then I told them, let's wait until we get the result. So now both groups of students submitted their proposals to the competition. Before the proposal due dates, the College of Business provided all sorts of webinars to help students develop their proposals, which was very helpful. So at least one of their team groups members attended some of the webinars, and then they shared their learnings from the webinars to strengthen their proposals. And then this is the Bear BI, the only project number 1 was invited to the final competition because, as I mentioned, only 5 proposals were invited to the final competition presentation stage. And the second team was not invited, unfortunately. The first team was invited. The BID competition, the judges' rubrics comprises 2, coverage of key components about business, and then the second is assessment of oral presentation. My students didn't get the award because I would say they are not trained for business. They are not business minded at all. They are more policy minded. So students were not surprised about the result, but at the same time, they were kind of, they spent so many hours in preparing for this competition, but they didn't get the award. It was disappointing, but it was a great relief for students who are graduating. Dr. Kim, I don't need to start my business, because of the seed money that might get the award, right? That was interesting. What to improve and how to improve? I would say, because these 2 student groups participated in the entrepreneurship competition, they were grateful about these new opportunities. And they were particularly the first group was mentored by the Dean of College of Business. It was a great opportunity for them to present and practice their proposals. And then she provided humongous feedback to strengthen their proposal, competition proposals. However, it's a competition, right? And then it's business model. So as a result, they had to emphasize how can be competitive in the market, rather than how to build up more community partnership, which the Living Lab project was aiming at. So gradually we lost that community partnership building, significantly because of the focus of the competition. And I found I need to provide more guidance for community engaged projects. I had to advise students, where to start to develop the relationship with the community, community partners. But I was not super aware of how to start. So after this semester, during the summer, I attended a community engaged project learning workshop hosted by the hosted by Bridgewater State University in summer to learn about the resources and to learn about, the available information for the civic engagement and community-based learning. So I was grateful for bridging those gaps during the summer. And how to balance between business and public interest, because a lot of students, as I mentioned, not business minded, but rather they are policy minded, because most of the students are political science major. So some students were more interested in nonprofit organizations rather than business models. So I think I have to be aware of the potential challenge of the balancing between business model and public interests. Thank you so much. I hope the second part of the presentation was deliverable to the audience. Let me stop sharing my screen. Thank you for listening.
Joining us, and sorry for the inconvenience. Let me invite the next presenter, Professor Jung-in Lee. He's a research professor at iPad Yonsei University. He will present a comparative study on pre- and post-surveys and living lab activities of 4 universities. Please welcome Professor Lee.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jung Lee, research professor in iPad, and this is my presentation is the final presentation. So please keep alert to me. My topic in the presentation is comparative surveys and outcomes of living in lab activities among South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, and USA. Let's take an overview of my presentation. Let's get started to introduction directly. Actually, it's the first time to apply and teach living lab in international universities. So it's the first time too to make a form of survey to evaluate and see how the students are doing during the class with living activities. So it's very hard at first to from the start make an aim or make an anticipation of how we should focus on items about living names. So I got a lot of help from the experts and professors, including the professors from Semyeong universities especially. We made an aim to, primary aim to, we should analyze the effectiveness of living labs classes in each country, and to compare the outcomes and to see just what's going on each country and how the students feel, and hopefully how students get outcome and how they recognize their outcome. So in this regard, we expect to determine the kind of extent of improvement and competence and satisfactions. So let's just an overview. See an overview of the whole curriculum and partner universities class. One is the Yonsei University, located in Wonju in South Korea. But the related departments are different from each other. So the class in Wonju is in Department of International Relations, and the course title is International Development Cooperation. And second, Tan Chao University in Tueng Quang in Vietnam. There are two classes for living activities are in the Department of Economic and in the Department of Social Welfare for each. And the course title is, one is International Economics and the other is Social Welfare and Ethnic Minorities, where Professor Tui and Dao taught. And second is, as you saw the presentation before, UGM, Jakarta, Indonesia, in the Department of Public Policy, and the course title is Global Public Policy, where the Professor Gabriel and Erida taught. And the last one is the Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts, United States, in the Department of Political Science, and the title is Problems International in Environmental Politics. So we made a survey before to do this. We asked the students to participate in the survey and to answer the questionnaires in some form. Actually, the total number of students joining the class are different from the number of the respondents. Because, for example, in case of Yonsei University, we literally asked the students to participate in the survey and answer. But some of the students denied this for some reason. Yeah, but it's we opened all the possibilities, so we accepted this. So this number of respondents are a little smaller than the participants in each class. Sorry. So when it comes to the determining the areas of the research, actually this is the, as far as I know, is the first attempt to make a survey form about living lab activities. So it means there is no proper references to follow or study to make living lab surveys. So it's kind of a job to create from the start in the final form. So we made an effort to make a kind of a systematic approach to the living activities. So we decided to make a test twice, a pre-test before the class and the post-test at the end of the semester. Yeah. So let me just see the whole areas of the research and whole items. First of all, as we are going to make a pre and post survey with a t-test or analysis of factors or other technical methods. So we need some ID number for students' identification. And we also gather some seemingly helpful information of students like sex and year of enrollment and reasons for taking this class as a background of taking the class and expectations for the class and current priority in his or her student's life and the level of understanding of living lab before. Yeah, this is a basic information and to understand each student's background and motivation. And when it comes to former area of the research, we sorted 5 categories to evaluate students' competence. Actually, it is very controversial issue from the academic perspective in education, especially. What is the accurate study to evaluate and perceive students' capacity? But anyway, we decided to make 5 categories of competence. We anticipated students' activities in living the class. One is cooperation to help each other and grouping. Second is creativity, and 3 is problem solving, and global citizenship, and studying major competency. So these 5 categories of competence consist of 6 sub-items, sub-questionnaires for each, and these questionnaires are validated from preceding studies, similar studies. And so this competence should be answered twice, as I mentioned before the semester, before the class, and after the class. And we also made some kind of items of questionnaires. We anticipated, though not validated, but we expected to get students improvement during the class. One is understanding major, and understanding major with living lab especially, and understanding major with global or local perspective, and understanding living itself. And we also wanted to know how the students feel this living in a class. So we added the items of satisfaction and significance. Yeah, so the survey form was made before the semester, and we distributed the instructors in the class, each class, and we are waiting at the end of the semester, and we sent another form of a post-survey form to the professors. So in principle, students were requested to complete pre-test and at the beginning of the test semester, and post-test, both tests. Oh, sorry. Oh, it's it's the former presentation. Yeah, this. Yeah. So these categories consist of 6 items, as I mentioned, but each respondent should have answered both pre and post test, but the students did not respond to the common questionnaire in the post survey, except the students in Yonsei University. I think it's due to the miscommunication. Yeah. So we just got the outcomes, the perfect outcomes in Yonsei University, and the questionnaires in pre-survey and additional questions in post-survey. We got the outcome in other universities. So it's kind of limited. We met a kind of limited situation to evaluate and analyze the data properly and fully. But in the presentation, I can show some kind of overall outcomes of the Yonsei University students living lab, and just scored once for the questions in post-survey in the other universities. So first case is in Yonsei University in South Korea. Yeah. The total number of the respondents are 18, and 10 female students and 8 male students. And the blue bar means the score in the pre-survey, and green bar means score in post-survey. Actually, as we expected always this, we generally assume the score in post-survey often higher than those in pre-survey, but things in real life that always not happened like this. So creativity, problem solving, and global citizenship and major comprehension got higher score in a post-survey, but in the category of cooperation, there's a small reduce, but it's not significant statistically. It's a very small reduced, but yeah, this is data shows, and this sample of the number are very small. So it's very cautious to decide some conclusions only with these outcomes. But in statistically, in the creative category of creative showed some statistical significance of rise. And when it comes to additional questionnaires in living lab activities, in post-survey, Korean students got the highest score is significance in the class or in the living lab activities, and followed by the satisfaction in the class and understanding living lab and so on. And the other cases, we only see the outcomes of additional questions in post-survey. So just let me brief point out the meaningful just the outcomes. So in case in Danjiao University, understanding major with the living lab got highest scored, and followed by understanding major with global perspective and significance and so on. And in the case of UGM, significance got highest score, and followed by satisfaction and understanding major with global perspective. And BWSU, satisfaction is the highest, but as you see, the significance is very low. But it's not that low because the perfect score is 4, and this is a very close to the average. Because I think it's because the sample number of in USA is just 6, and one participant check the lowest score in this category. So that's why we can apparent difference between these. But for some reason, students can freedom to check whatever they want. So we can not control this. This is an overview of the former outcomes among all the universities, but some data are miscalculated. I apologize. So after my presentation, I will submit the accurate data on the table. But the former data was the accurate, but this visually is false. So let's move to conclusion and suggestions. Actually, this is a pilot test, and it's kind of a creation of to evaluate and just to see how students feel and how students get some accomplishment they think during living the class. So I think we should not overestimate or take an optimism view only with these results, but statistically, in Korean case, they exhibited a significant difference for creativity statistically. I think which means doing living activity implies some think differently or think innovatively. So that's why students feels they got grow up for creativity during the class. But while no statistically significant distinction were observed in other countries. And second, the overall results showed no statistical significance. But it seemingly someone thinks this is a meaningless survey at all. But from the education perspective, as an educator myself, this can imply some meaningful significance. So if if time permits to say in the discussion session, then let me talk about it. And is one of the mistake conducting this survey is we cannot inform all we want and all we guide to every professors in each class. So with some missed outcomes and misinformation, but we this is a pilot test, so we make this can be a kind of stepstone to improve the following studies. So we decided to change the plan for a survey in coming semester. This is the third one. So I think I needed to distribute a common guide for the implementation of the test in advance. And I think it's recommended to just make a online form by Yonsei University and distribute to a link to a class. I think it's it can reduce some kind of unexpected errors. Yeah. And in follow-up study, I think after all, this quantitative approach, I guess, has a limitation for some reasons. So we will develop or add some qualitative interview and some kind of field study, if I can, to capture the features of the university living labs and including and I guess I assume I add some we should emphasize our living activities, living lab activities in the university class. This is a different ways of other living activities, as you saw the presentation yesterday. Yeah, so I can focus. I would like to focus on these features of university living labs. So I can. We should develop some more detailed items and questionnaires on this. Yeah. Yeah. This is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Now we are going to move the discussion session. We have 3 discussants. Firstly, let me invite Professor Song-Hee Han. She is a professor in College of General Education at Semyeong University. Professor Han, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Song-Hee Han. I work for Semyeong University. It's an honor to be here with great scholars and colleagues. Thank you for all your wonderful presentations and discussions. I'm interested in higher education part, especially student success, student engagement, and experiences. So this conference was very meaningful as I able to look at good examples of classes and international cooperation through living lab activities. In this session, I was able to get a glimpse of the efforts of the professors and the engagement of the students by examining how the living lab classes were conducted in Korea and US and the result of empirical effect analysis through surveys. From educational perspectives, I thought the living lab is a significant tool for student success with cases of Korea, US, and other countries it confirmed that students will expand their perspectives and have the potential to become community innovator. This means that Living Lab has value as an educational experiences that drives student growth and development in higher education context. So I have some questions that we would like to discuss together to improve the quality of Living Lab for student success and furthermore the development of its university, local community, and global society. Please look at the page 2A3 to 2A5. In Korea and US cases, students were able to have an opportunity to deeply understand and think about the local issues they were belong to. And also this class provided students with an opportunity to become interested in the local community and grow into community innovators. So this is question to Professor Shin and Kim. Page number is 2A4. First, Living Lab activities are expected to have an educational effect when linked with class themes rather than existing separately from classes. It means that regular session and Living Lab project should be connected to class objectives. I wonder if you think the class topic and the Living Lab activities are well connected and whether you have made any special efforts to achieve this. Also, I wonder if students feel that their understanding of their major has improved through the Living Lab activity. Second, as I listened to the conference, the question changed. Currently, Korea and the US have collaboration between similar majors, political science. If you were to collaborate with a Living Lab with another major, what major would you like to work with? I believe the convergence between various majors will be important in the future and it should be expanded. Third, I think this is the most important question. Compared to before the Living Lab activity, what kind of changes do you think have occurred in the instructors and learners after the class is over? Next, Professor Lee tried to explore the empirical effectiveness of the Living Lab activities in 4 countries through a survey. Even though the data collection process was not strictly carried out as written in the paper, the result of this study have academic and practical significance in that it's the first step in exploring the outcomes of Living Lab activities in international education collaboration. Also, the fact that creativity significantly increased in the case of Korea is very interesting. And then there are some questions to Dr. Lee, page number 2A5. First, as a follow-up study, how about use comparative analysis of individual backgrounds? It's predicted that the experience and outcomes of students will be different depending on reasons for taking this class, expectations for the class, and the level of understanding of Living Lab, I think. Second, in the previous presentations, it can be seen that the understanding of the local community has increased and the students perceive themselves as community innovators. So I think this is the another outcomes for Living Lab activities. So it's good to include indicators for this. Also, competencies of entrepreneurship or innovation part can be included. Then finally, the most important thing is the competence of the instructor, the ability to give lectures, facilitate projects, and balance classes and Living Lab activities, and appropriate educational interventions can enhance the effectiveness of Living Lab classes with project-based learning. In Korea, workshops and discussions are held among professors to develop teaching methods. So I suggest that it's necessary to conduct workshop or consulting session between instructors before and after Living Lab activities like this conference. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Han. Now, nextly, I would like to invite Professor Stephen Rothman from Rich-Macon University. Stephen Rothman is a professor at the College of Asia-Pacific Studies and Graduate School of Asia-Pacific Studies at Rich-Macon. Please welcome Mr. Professor Stephen.
Thank you. Is it on? Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for your great hospitality being here. This is a really great group of people, and I was really happy to meet you all as part of this program. I'm sort of an outsider looking in because I've never heard of the Living Lab before I received the email from Sangbum about a month ago. And so I'm really excited to be part of the group and learning a lot from all of you. And just our conversations, it's clear that everyone is really friendly, and it's a great group that you brought together here, so I really appreciate that. For those of you who don't know me, and for especially for Professor Kim, I'm Stephen Rothman. I'm from Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University, not Ritsumeikan University. They're actually different. So I'm located in Beppu, Japan, not Kyoto, Japan. So it's a little bit different. But I've known Sangbum from University of Oregon a long time ago, so I appreciate the invitation. So, like I said, the Living Lab was brand new to me when I first saw the email, but it's not really a wholly new idea. We've had these ideas like internships, capstone projects, and problem-based learning for a long time. And so that's why I asked yesterday about what makes the Living Lab distinctly different from all of these other kinds of active learning projects that I've been a part of and that others have been a part of before. And for me, I think, Professor Shin explained that the lab part is important, the experimental part is important. I thought that it was a little bit broader concept in the sense that there has to be just some data analysis and some review, not necessarily running an experiment per se, but doing some kind of analytical component of your project and seeing how well your project worked and whether it was effective or not. But that's, to me, what makes the Living Lab different from other kinds of active learning components. So today I'm going to talk about the 3 papers, and my professor at University of Oregon when I was getting my PhD used to call me a lumper rather than a splitter. I like to put things together rather than take things apart and find all the nitty-gritty details. So I will probably I look for broader ideas and patterns and bigger thinking. So I'm going to group them. Even though there are only 3 papers, I'm actually going to group them to 2 categories. I'll talk about Dr. Kim and Dr. Shin's paper first, and then I'll talk about Dr. Lee's paper second. So Dr. Kim and Dr. Shin's paper are really good examples of applying the Living Lab principles within a class. And so if you want to actually do it, these are really good papers to read and to look at how the professors implemented them. Dr. Lee's paper is a little different because it's using a cross-comparative case analysis to actually examine several classes and try to analyze the effectiveness of the program. So in terms of the Living Lab project and in the first 2 papers, I think there are really 3 big challenges for running Living Labs. First is the global thinking and local thinking kind of problems. Second is assessment, and third is going beyond the Living Lab, and I'll explain what each of those are in turn. So for the first one, for a long time, as scholars, as professors, we tried to get students to stop thinking about themselves and start thinking about things beyond their immediate environment. And so we'd spent a lot of time talking about theory and talking about big issues and global ideas and things like that. But now it seems like we're going backwards, right? We're doing the opposite again. We're taking them back from thinking about the world and bringing them back home. And this is a theme beyond just our education. It's now in pop culture. For example, people are, I guess, popular spokespeople on YouTube and other things, they're saying, make your bed before trying to change the world, right? And these ideas are becoming much more common to get students to look at their local life first, fix things close to them before trying to fix things that are bigger issues. And we're trying to do that again with the Living Lab. And that's a challenge. So we have to change the way they think again. Instead of local to global, now we're going global to local. The second, and both papers actually do this really well. So they both explain the goals and objectives of the class very well in their cases. They design the classes very well. I think both curriculums were well designed. There's a lot of student control in both classes, so they allow the students to explore the possibilities of local problems before interjecting their own ideas. So the professors are really taking a step back from the classes, and they provide guidance when the students are having trouble, which is really important. So in essence, I think that both papers exhibit a good explanation of how to solve this problem of trying to bring the students back from the global to the local. I mean, even Dr. Shin was talking today about how he provided some theories on democracy, again, the big picture, big ideas, but trying to get them to think in a local capacity, which again is a little bit of a challenge. The second component is the assessment component, and this is something I'm also going to talk about in Lee's paper afterwards, Dr. Lee's paper. But when we're thinking about assessment as professors, we normally think about assessment in terms of outcomes. I mean, even we are graded on our outcomes, right, on our publications and citations. So they don't really come look at our classes and see how well we're teaching or anything. They just look at, you know, what we produce. And for students as well, we usually grade them on essays and tests and things like that. But the problem here with the Living Lab is that we're not really teaching for tests. You know, these programs are teaching for skill-based learning, and so we're looking at trying to measure things like creativity and problem solving and critical thinking and analytical thinking and things like that, which is really difficult to do. And in this case, both papers took a little different perspective. Dr. Kim used the scaffolding system, which I think is a really great system. It's something that I've also used in my classes to help students build on previous work to create an ultimate project at the end. Each step builds on the last step. And Dr. Shin uses the sort of two different kinds of grading techniques. One was the approval system that you talked about. I like to call it the competency system. So basically when someone has competency in a particular skill, you say, okay, you're good at that, you can move on to the next one. And I actually use that also for thesis writing in my students. If they don't have a good research question, they can't proceed to the next level. They have to keep doing the research question over again until they get a good one. So I think that's appropriately done in both cases. And I also think that's really important for Dr. Shin's paper that he, in the grading aspect, in the scaled grading aspect, when he's providing a grade to the students, he looks at their reflection of the work rather than just the output. And I think that's a good technique to evaluate kind of how they think about the skills rather than just, you know, what they can produce in that moment. And the third point, going beyond the Living Lab, this is another challenge that I think is probably prevalent, maybe more so for me than a lot of other schools. I was talking to Dr. Shin this morning about the governance of Yonsei, and it seems a lot easier to get things done here than it is at my university. Everything has to be approved by 15 people before you can get anything changed. But basically, for me, this comes down to institutionalization of the idea of a living lab. And institutionalization, in my perspective, can occur in two directions. It can occur horizontally or vertically. And from a horizontal perspective, that's when you're trying to get other faculty involved in your university, trying to get it spread to other disciplines, other majors, or getting contests involved, getting funding from other groups like that, and trying to create a sort of horizontal bridge between different groups. The vertical institutionalization is when you're trying to make it part of the university itself, and you're trying to get it sort of incorporated into the larger curriculum or into the mission statement and things like that. Both of these present really big challenges, and I think Dr. Shin has a little bit of a sort of advantage here, having done it for so long and having a lot of access to funding outside of the class. But I think this deserves a lot more discussion from both papers, because it's really a difficult aspect of creating a new teaching style and getting really absorbed within the university. So I think that it deserves a little bit more discussion. Now I just want to talk about Dr. Lee's paper a little bit. So in this case, Dr. Lee assessed the effectiveness of Living Lab using the comparative case study analysis in a pre and post tests. And he called it a pilot study. I'm not sure if it was intended to be a pilot study, but the results sort of require it to be a pilot study because there was a lot of data issues, which is perfectly reasonable, I think. And a lot of projects that we have on pedagogy often focus on self-assessment. So it's a really good project to have, is to focus on outcome performance indicators rather than just self-assessment. Lots of research we see published in academic journals on education focus only on self-assessment of the students. And it's always really positive, right? Because students really love innovative and interesting things. But the real question is does it work, right? Does it actually improve the students in any way? Now, in this case, the results suggested similar to what I found in my past, that the students like it. They love living labs, but the sort of outcomes were relatively flat. And I know that you said that one is statistically significant, but personally, I don't use 0.1 as a significance level, so I would probably say it wasn't statistically significant still. So from my perspective, it's quite flat, or basically a non-result. Doesn't mean that it didn't work, right? It just means that we don't have enough data, or we haven't developed the right measures to determine that it actually improved the students' outcomes. So, but again, this comes down to measurement and assessment, and it's very difficult because we're really talking about, you know, creativity, problem-solving skills, and it's hard to measure those things, especially on a written test that you might give the students, or a survey, and try to assess their qualitative skills. My daughter is applying to, or she's going to apply to high schools soon in Japan, and one of the schools is an IB program, International Baccalaureate, and they require her to write an essay, but then if she passes the essay, she has to go for an interview, but the interview is actually the group work for the students, and they're watching the students work in groups. And this is a very good way for them to observe things like cooperation, creativity, problem solving, critical thinking among the students trying to solve a problem, right? And that's sort of how I'm thinking about this paper, is that maybe the measurement technique needs to be changed. We have to think about how we can measure these in a more suitable environment, because a lot of these skills are contextual. So if you're teaching students how to engage with government officials and then you ask them questions on the test, those skills might not translate. So we need to test them in the environment that we're teaching them in. You know, put them in another environment where there's maybe fake government officials, and then have them present, you know, and then watch how they present in those kinds of situations. The other issue here is the timing. A lot of these skills take a long time to build. So if we're thinking about, you know, creativity and problem-solving skills, they might not even know what they learned for a year. It might take them a long time to absorb the kind of information and thinking, and they might need 2 or 3 classes before they really get a hold of, you know, what's going on here in the problem building and problem-solving skills. So there's difficulty here, and I don't really have an answer. I mean, I only had a short time to think about it, but it is something that I think deserves discussion. Again, assessing these kinds of things is very difficult, and I think it deserves further discussion. I mean, this sad truth in terms of outcomes is a lot of times that we think professors have a lot of impact on how students you know, perform in class, and maybe the techniques we use, you know, we think it makes a difference, but students make the most difference, right? Their effort makes the most difference in how much they learn in a class, and so we really need to encourage them. So that's why self-satisfaction surveys might be really helpful, but we really need to know the students pre and post, but it's really hard to understand you know, how we influence them and how much we're actually improving their outcomes. So overall, I think a lot of the papers can learn from each other. I think that Dr. Shin's paper and Dr. Kim's paper both have a lot that can contribute to each other and teach each other about how to implement the class, and also all of us, of course. And I think Dr. Lee's paper can also benefit from learning especially the goals and objectives stated specifically in the first 2 papers to determine how you might measure the outcomes when you're doing a cross-comparative case analysis. But they were all really good, and I look forward to seeing them in publications someplace soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rossman. Let me invite last discussant, Ms. Pramasthitya Nindasari from UGM, Indonesia. Ms. Nindasari is a research assistant in the Research Center for Land Resources Management and UGM. Let me invite Ms. Nindasari.
Excuse me.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for all the presenter for the nice presentation. And first of all, let me express my gratitude to Professor Shin. Thank you for having me here. It's really a great honor for me, meeting you great people and having a great discussion here. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Okay, actually I have several comments and notes in this thick book of conference, but I think it will be brief. First, I will go to Professor Chung In-Yi. Professor Chung In-Yi has analyzed all the data that has been collected before, and I read the result indicates that the living laboratory enhanced the majority of Korean students' competencies. Creativity category inhibits a statistically significant. And the other one is the analysis of some additional categories exhibits that significance category reached the highest score. I think in my opinion, it means that the living lab experience was perceived as a growth-oriented or meaningful experience for students. And basically the idea of living lab is brilliant. However, we have to know that the resources in each university might be diverse. For example, the students' sensitivity or ability to understand the real problems is diverse as well. Besides, the mechanism of living lab implementation is vary. For example, Yonsei implements living lab by conducting maybe a field and class mechanism, and students have the ability and opportunity to find a local problem by themselves. But in UGM, especially Faculty of Agriculture, in some certain courses, students mostly implement the living lab as a field work, which is carried out once or twice within a semester. The rest of the activities in that semester is a lecture class. So the lecturers and professors teach in class to provide some basic knowledge so that the students could have a framework first before they go to the field, to the real world. And the other living lab mechanism is by joining transbullion living laboratory projects or research, as Prof. Junan explained yesterday. And it's basically a field mechanism, not a class one. However, this kind of living lab mechanism could also stimulate the students' curiosity and give them opportunity to find the local problems in the real world, so they can come up with problem-solving ideas. Some students bring the idea to his or her thesis research. The living lab mechanism in these two universities we know is different. The difference mechanism or method of living lab could be an opportunity for us to learn more. And my question is gonna be brief for Professor Chung In-Yi. In your opinion, will living laboratory effectiveness reach the same result in the other university if they implement the same mechanism or method? Because I think if the discussion goes further, probably from this point we can find the most effective implementation mechanism of living laboratory as a learning method. Either we use the same method or it will adjust the situation based on each university. And then I will go to Professor Kim In-kyung in USA. So I have read the paper, and the elucidation that she wrote in her paper was marvelous. It's really detailed. The students, I think, engage very well with the living lab concept. They seem fully understand and rich in knowledge. There are several differences between how the BSU and UGM students execute living lab learning. In UGM, especially Faculty of Agriculture, there is no any course that performs living lab in one semester entirely. The only scheme that could accommodate living lab fully in one semester is independent learning campus program. However, for Faculty of Agriculture students, especially who major in soil science, the scheme is mostly done in the real world field, not in a class. So yeah, it's a lecture class. The living lab mechanism in UGM is carried out by doing research and community services. For research scheme, students will go to the study area, get along with the people, and sometimes they live with them there, and they conduct a research which the result is not always used directly. That's the fact. And it's different with a research scheme. Community services is a program that the people in a society will directly perceive the benefits, either the economic, social, or environmental aspects. Students will go to places all over Indonesia and live there for around 1.5 to 2 months. And then they observe and find the local problems, then discuss it in a group, and they will draw up some programs or projects and implement them. And basically, in my opinion, there is a good chance the different mechanism of living lab implementation and also the different of discipline will be an advantage for us. We will be able to charge each other. As we can see today, in this room, we have various resources. Yeah, maybe Prof. Junon and I are the only people who come from physical major. But when I came here, I feel like, wow, I think I need to learn more about political and social, because the fact is we encounter social problem as well when we try to implement our idea to the field in a society. So, Professor Kim, I have 3 questions. The first one is, how did the students in BSU find the local problems? Did they allocate a certain time to observe, or is it based on the daily observation? Yeah, because we just know the problems in our surrounding, right? And the second one, did the BSU students involve the society to implement their projects together, especially for the waste issue? If they did, what kind of approach was taken? Because as we know that waste issue is one of the biggest environmental issue in this world. Even in Indonesia, it's #1. And of course, it implicates many parties. Waste come from industry, household, farmland, and so on, which is our surrounding, and surely it involves society. And if your student in your class did not involve the society, I want to know how they execute the program, the project that they carried out. But if my question is too far, I'm so sorry, because it's a little bit substantial, I think. But from this question now, we can learn that by conducting a living lab, basically students will have a wide opportunity to dig in further about a problem-solving process. And I believe that now the students already get the ability or skills, and maybe they even have mastered in observing, identifying problems, and finding the problem-solving ideas. But they also need to learn how to build a network and understand who plays the role in terms of problem-solving process. As Professor Tae Dong Lee stated yesterday, that we need to involve the stakeholders to solve the problems. And the last one, I will go to Professor Shin. Professor Shin has explained the Living Lab project in detail and holistic. And I do agree that a lecturer as an instructor in Living Lab plays an important role. The sensitivity to understand students' character should be possessed by all instructors. And Professor Shin, I think I adore you because you assisted students step by step, patiently, in the learning process to stimulate their curiosity, logical thinking, teamwork, and creativity. And another one, Professor Shin has explained that the university should have an institutional mechanism in which professors from various majors and departments should cooperate to help students to solve the problems. However, the universities in Korea, I think, does not this kind of mechanism, right? And the situation is different compared to university system in Indonesia. In some cases, in Indonesia, professor from the science majors has a solving problem idea that needs a supportive idea from engineering professor. They can share the idea and execute it together so that the outcome of the project will be more precise. And for example, like Prof. Junan explained yesterday about Transbulan, it consists of researchers from various majors such as geography, soil science, pest and disease of plant, and urban planning, and so on. So we used to work interdisciplinary. And my question is, based on the actual situation in Korea, a professor for now could not have the opportunity to work with other professors from the different department. Then how do your students in your class in the living laboratory execute their idea, especially for those who choose the environmental issue such waste or climate change? Because I think they need insight and advice from another major. And the second one, it's a light question. How do you encourage the free rider students to be actively involved themselves in a discussion? I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I would like to invite presenters to present in the order of Professor Shin, Professor Lee, and Professor Kim.
Thank you for all good comments, and because we are approaching to the time, so I'm gonna very quickly respond to these good comments to try myself to save some times. We are applying the Living Lab into the classrooms, but before that, the Living Lab has some kind of very important keywords. We didn't really talk about that, but one of them is actually mentioned by Tae-dong Lee is the co-creation. But the other ones are politics of experiment, which means when the stakeholders cooperate to solve the problem, the relationship between these actors are not specified in Living Lab. In a top-down manner, problem-solving activities, just like government planning, each role is designated and the hierarchy is set up. So there's a one who can provide funding, who can provide some management. So everything, the split up is already decided. Here, everything is not set up. So we have to make some interactions and then build up some connections and then the relations. This is really a big part in terms of the civil politics, in terms of the new types of democracy, in the real Living Lab experiments that I did a lot of times in Wonju before I applied this into the classroom. So this is really challenging. And once I did it in the classroom 3 years ago. And then in that classroom, we actually, because if we want to do this, we actually make students involved in the real experiment. It takes a lot of time. And students in general do not like it because, hey, professor, we can just sit and learn and then take tests and then get grades. And we don't have to get outside. We don't have to be involved in a lot of tasks. And we spend too much time and energy and then get three credits and then the same credits. So they don't really like this. But actually, that's another part, very important part of the Living Lab. And also the other one is the keyword is the term called citizen science. Citizen science means these participants actually build up the data. Once 3 years ago, I actually organized the Living Lab project in Wonju, which is about the air pollution. In the citizens, they were given the device to measure the degree of air pollution. And their own interest of measurement of those air pollution was very different. For example, one citizen, he's very much enjoying the riding a bicycle. And then he was curious about if I ride a bike in the morning time or evening time, which one is air pollution is more serious. He was curious about that. So he measured and compared those air pollution level in the morning time and in the evening time with about 3 months. All by himself, he measured that. In that case, in those are the process of the civil citizen science. If the citizens can create and control the data about some of the problems, then they can have a power, which is developed into a kind of new types of civil democracy. So that's another aspects of these projects. And again, this is not available in classroom activities but I teach them and emphasize them this very much. And then also many of the problems, many of the comments that you raised, Professor Han and Professor Rothman, are in our process of one of the papers, and those comments from the reviewers are all the same. So I'm really glad, and I really have a struggle to respond to these questions. But for the questions from Professor Han, I have some initial answers, but I'm not ready for this at this moment. What changes can we expect in instructors and students before and after this class? And then can we expand this Living Lab projects in the classroom beyond some social sciences, or how can we connect the original the lecture issues in lecture topics into the Living Lab project? So those are really challenging problems. One other thing that I would like to mention is the institutionalization. I just briefly mentioned this, but I'm finishing a book. It's just in Korean, but book is about the Living Lab in college education. And this is really a big part, and I really made a very short comments about this, but this is not about the institutionalization, I guess. This is about how do we cooperate with each other in terms of the different departments and different professors. And it's really hard because people are not interested in this, and they don't have to. And if they are not interested in, that's fine, because we're not saying that this is the best one. We have to do this. We don't really say that. So this is one of the methods, one of the teaching methods that we can apply, but we are not saying this is the best one. This is the only one that we have to do. So, and then we are not saying that every professor should do this. So it's okay. So I just usually let my students to make some connections to the professors. If they're doing some face mask recycling, then I connect them to the professors in the medical school and get some advice from them. And then if it's about the plastics, and then I connect them to the Department of Packaging professors, then they will get some advice to them. So in that way they communicate. But institutionalization is really hard. And then professors do not have any motivations. In my department, I recommend my professors to do this, and nobody does this, so it's okay. So anyhow, but again, thank you very much for your nice comments. And tomorrow afternoon session is all about this too. So we're going to talk about this more about what we are going to do in the next semester. So we will talk about this a little bit more. So thank you.
And Professor Lee, yeah.
How much time can I get? 2 minutes, okay. Then thank you for very remarkable discussions of my paper. Then I summarize these questions into 2 questions. One is about the obstacles. The obstacles consist of 2 kinds of obstacles. When it comes to international study, I think language matters. Even if I made a good form of survey, in Korean language. It is another problem to translate this into a proper foreign language. This is one hard obstacles hard to get away, and the other is, as your professor said earlier, the other I forgot now. A cultural background. I think the comments of the professors was very accurate. There is no. This is impossible to get similar outcomes, even if we take the same approach and the same method to do living lab. It's very difficult. That's why I think it's recommended to add some qualitative research like interview or field research. So I think it might be helpful just to explore some overall procedure, not just performing and getting score, just exploring how students or even instructor can be changed during the class, living the class. And the other is I totally agree with Professor Roseman's discussion. Actually, from the start, I can raise that problem. What is the educational experience, or what is the student's growth? Actually, I'd like to sort of three kinds of education experience. One is education growth. One is growth in a short term, and second is growth in long term, as you said. And the third is quite interesting to me: growth even unknown to the agent. Students even don't know what they learned. They just act as they always do, but they did learn something after the class. But this kind of outcome cannot be shown in the test questionnaires. So this is very complex problem. So I don't have answer either. So I surrender. That's my response. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to give a mic to Professor In-kyung Kim. Can you still listen to us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, great. Take your time,
good.
Professor Kim. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Professor Nam, can I have one of the fruit cups, which seems very delicious on the desk in your room?
I can deliver to you.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry because it's 11 p.m. here in the United States. Thank you so much for the three discussants. Your comments are phenomenal, and I categorized your comments into three into three themes. The first one will be, the level of accomplishment of educational mission. I loved the professor from Ritsumeigang in Peppu. Are we producing a philosopher, or are we producing or training action taker in higher education? What should we do? Can we combine these two concepts into one through Living Lab? I mean, this was a very important big question to me. And are we serving? What is higher education designed for? And the generational change and everything, are we compromising too much? I don't like the word of the career readiness, because we are not training, businessmen or, any kind of job in the real world. We are producing critical thinker. So that question was really, hitting me. And Dr. Han's comments about, are we accomplishing the learning outcomes through this Living Lab projects? I mean, the theme of your comments was about execution of Living Lab. I think the accomplishment of the educational mission and the execution of Living Lab is related. They are related. Dr. Rin Dresch from UGM asked how my students find their local problems for their projects. This is really good question, because we have to connect our syllabus, right? The content that we deliver throughout the semester to the Living Lab. But what we do for the Living Lab is urging students to decide their project topic as early as possible, right? Even before they are introduced to the main topics of the course. So how did my students find their local problems? I would say from daily observation, because they didn't have they didn't have enough chance to observe the content that my class was covering throughout the semester. What if they learned earlier about the content, such as, is nuclear energy safe, right? Is hydropower the clean enough? Those kind of questions. If so all those materials were covered after their topics were chosen. So that was the kind of key challenge for me, for any class or any research paper based key assignments for upper level courses. Students have to create their research questions even before they absorb all the important content that I provide. So accomplishment of educational mission, in a big picture, like a philosopher versus action taker, also content-based versus the project-based. I don't have an answer yet, but I will keep thinking about it. I think these questions will be very good discussion topic for your afternoon discussion. For the third item, for the third theme of your discussion points, is what is the next step for going beyond Living Lab? This is great question. How can I institutionalize all these active learning models? I am grateful to have one of the assistant provost from my university here on Zoom. He is so willing to attend this conference at this late night because he is a cheerleader in active learning through virtual international exchanges. So he is very curious about what what Living Lab project is about and what I did in the past semester. So I'm very grateful to have him in this conference, because I need to discuss how to institutionalize of my experiences to Living Lab in my university. I think the horizontal versus vertical kind of implementation, this concept is really, really good. We can easily expand horizontally, but interestingly, the vertically in my own institution, it seems more difficult. I think it seems hypocritical to me. The vertical expansion should be easier because I have more physical contact to my own institutions, but it's not always easier than horizontal expansion that Dr. Shin is greatly doing at this moment. So not much answers to your questions, but more questions to myself, about these three things. Thanks to your kind of a great discussion points. I really appreciate all your comments and questions. I really appreciate it to develop my engagement through Living Lab. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kim. We are a little bit behind the schedule, so I'd like to close this session in 5 minutes. And before we open the floor to the participant, I see a name of Vice President of BSU, whose name is Wing Kaito. If you have any comment and question, then please do.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Can you change the screen? 화면 좀 바꿔주세요. Okay, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Shin and all the participants from the conference. I have not prepared for any comments, so I'm trying to just talk about what I think after attending this session. I have looked at the agenda of the conference and understand that this is a collaboration and a conclusion for the collaborations over the last semester between 4 universities in this Living Lab project. And it's really an important multi-country and multi-university collaborations between South Korea, Indonesia, and Vietnam, and the United States. And even though it's not, it's bilateral more than multilateral, it really serves the purpose of mutual learning, even though it's not each country works with Yonsei University, I believe. And as the idea of Living Lab as one of the models for experiential learning and virtual learning, and I think we're going through a very interesting period when different learning models converge with each other, both because due to the pandemic, the necessity to innovate for pedagogical thinking and learning, and on the other hand, but also utilize some of the new ideas of student-centered and project-based thinking for more tangible kind of meaningful outcomes for our students. So I do think that we do have a lot of different models for learning in the COIL field and virtual exchange field, and also in terms of international cooperation. So I just wanted to give my appreciation to Dr. Shin for involving Bridgewater State University and Dr. Kim for connecting to our projects, to your project. And I should say that Dr. Kim belongs to a cohort of faculty members, around a dozen of them, who are involved in 3 different types of project-based learning models. This class is using the Living Lab model, but she also mentions CUBE, collaborative online business experiences, and she also mentioned the other business entrepreneurship, and then she is also part of the UN-SDG project that deal with the similar issues. So I do think that there are different projects going on at BSU that try to achieve similar outcomes for active student engagement and for problem solving, for connecting the global and the local junctures in our learning. So I think continuously this is a perfect model to think about the relationship between the local and global. as someone who works on global engagement, I really appreciate this idea. So I look forward to reading more about the papers in this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to open for like one or two comments from the participant. Could you raise your hand if you have any comment or question? Yeah, Professor Erda.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think I just want to share what my thought during our today's conference and living labs cases from many countries. I had two things in my mind that I think I need to share. The first is that I think we need to make kind of from structure of living lab, but not from output of the living lab. So output will be gathered or will be gained based on the process and also based on the input. Because we have the different input, we have the different process, of course the output will be different. But we can make some of structure on the way how to deliver a living lab in the certain form that are similar to many countries, so that possibly those can be as a methodology to be recommended for another courses or another discipline, yeah, because we have also diverse discipline for science and also social science and really like really pure science like agriculture, etc. So that's come up in my mind. And the second thing is to evaluate, like what Professor Jung In Lee said, qualitative analysis perhaps is also important rather than seeing numbers. Because of course, again, come back to the first perspective that seeing this from the input process and output, that is very different. So evaluating using the qualitative, I think is more beneficial nowadays because we have also limited cases. So qualitative will allow us to deeply understanding the context, why and how, and very deeply knowing why this has happened and how connect these happen from another countries to see the patterns, to see the differences, to see the cause and perhaps the impact of that. That's only two comments for the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Professor Santoso?
Thank you. I want to go back to Professor Lee's address yesterday. It is about co-creation and creation with the businesses, with the community or the government and alike. But I didn't see the way you measure the co-creation aspect of it. I mean, do the student are getting some component of his mark from the mentor on the ground, or what are the criteria for measuring up the impact and the like? I just want to see that. Thank you.
So Professor Shin or Lee, would you like to take the comment or question? Okay. Okay, we can talk about it during the after session. So if you don't have any comment or question, yeah, we are finishing now. And once again, thank you very much for all panelists who have been made this session very meaningful. And for your information, afternoon session will not be streamed as it will be very internal discussion among the participants. So now the session 1 of the day 2 is closed. Thank you so much.